The thick mahogany desk felt solid beneath my fingertips, a stark contrast to the flimsy paper I was signing. Across from me, David, my ex-fiancé, shifted in his seat, his expensive suit looking a little too tight, a little too shiny. He was pleading, his voice a low whine. I remembered all too well, he didn't recognize me. How could he? 3 months. 3 months ago, I was a different person, scarred and desperate. Now, I sat in this opulent office, the CEO of the bank that held the mortgages on his family's home. I remembered his words, smooth and convincing, talking about our future as I signed away my financial stability for his debts. He disappeared the next day with her. The car accident came after, a twisted metal shell that should have killed me. Instead, it brought the fire that burned away the old scars, revealing a face I'd never known. It also unlocked a forgotten inheritance, a key to a world I'd only dreamed of. My pen pressed down, authorizing the repossession. David kept talking, oblivious. A subtle smile touched my lips. This was just the beginning of what you owe me. My life before felt like a series of bad hands dealt by people who claimed to love me. There were four main ones, the ones who twisted the knife deepest. First, David, my ex-fiancé. He came into my life like a knight, or so I thought. He saw past the burn scars that had defined me since I was 5, the ones that crisscrossed the left side of my face, a constant physical reminder of an accident I barely remembered. Growing up, those scars were a barrier, pushing people away, leaving me isolated. I craved acceptance, ached for someone to see me, not just the damaged surface. David seemed to be that person. He listened, he held my hand. He told me I was beautiful. He made me believe in a future where the scars didn't matter. He talked about starting a business, a big, ambitious plan. But he needed capital. He needed me to co-sign loans, significant ones. He painted a picture of our dream, our future, built together. I was so blinded by the idea of finally belonging, of being loved, that I signed without truly understanding the weight of the debt. That was 3 months ago. He vanished, leaving me with the loans and the crushing realization that he'd used my desperation for his own gain. He took off with a colleague, a woman who fit the picture of what he really wanted. Someone polished, someone who didn't come with baggage, financial or otherwise. The discovery broke me. The car crash that followed wasn't intentional, but a result of my shattered world. I was driving, tears blurring my vision, the betrayal a physical ache in my chest. The impact. It was violent. I woke up in a hospital, broken, but different. The burns were gone. My face was smooth, unblemished. And then came the lawyers, the unexpected news of a distant great uncle I'd never known, a silent magnate who had left me a controlling interest in a major bank. It felt like a second chance, a rebirth not just of my face, but of my life. I knew instantly what I had to do. They hurt me when I was weak. Now I had power. Then there was Mia, my childhood best friend. We were inseparable until the accident. After that, everything changed. Kids can be cruel, and Mia, whether out of fear or a twisted need to fit in, became one of the cruelest. She started the whispers, the rumors about how I got the scars, twisting the truth into something ugly and sensational. She'd subtly sabotage any chance I had at a normal relationship. A casual cruelty masked by a pitying smile. "He's nice," she'd say. "But do you think he can handle that?" Pointing subtly at my face. She thrived on my isolation, on being the pretty friend who had to look out for the damaged one. Her betrayal wasn't sudden like David's, but a slow, steady erosion of my self-worth, a constant reminder that I was less than. Lena, my older sister, was a different kind of wound. She was supposed to protect me, to be on my side. But Lena was always jealous, always resentful. Our grandmother, a kind soul who saw past my scars, had left a modest inheritance, intended for both of us, specifically mentioning my future education and financial security. Lena saw it as her ticket to a life of ease. After Grandma died, Lena twisted her words, claiming the inheritance was meant solely for her, that Grandma worried about her future, not mine, especially not with my condition. She took it all, my college fund, my only hope for a fresh start. She used it to live a comfortable life, never once offering to help me, even when I was struggling to make ends meet. Her betrayal was a cold, calculated theft, stealing not just money, but my future. And finally, Carter, my boss at the small financial firm where I worked. I was good with numbers, a natural at seeing patterns, at building models that predicted market shifts, but I was also quiet, insecure, still reeling from years of being judged on my appearance. Carter, smooth-talking and ambitious, saw my talent as an opportunity. He took my financial models, presented them as his own at industry conferences, built his reputation on my work. When I finally found the courage to confront him, to point out that he was stealing my intellectual property, he laughed. He told me I was delusional, that my limited experience meant I couldn't possibly have developed such sophisticated models. He fired me on the spot, a final act of dismissal that reinforced every insecurity I had about my worth. These four were the architects of my pain, the ones who shaped me with their betrayals. They fed my desperation for acceptance, making me easy prey. The scars were the physical manifestation of my difference, but their actions created the emotional disfigurement, the deep-seated belief that I was inherently flawed, unlovable, and unworthy of success. That's why David's seemingly genuine affection felt like a lifeline. He saw past the surface, or so I thought. The night he asked me to co-sign the loans, we were at his place, candles flickering, soft music playing. He held my hands, his thumbs gently tracing the lines on my scarred cheek. "This doesn't matter," he'd whispered, his eyes full of what I desperately wanted to believe was love. "What matters is us, our future." He talked about the business, about how this loan would be the foundation of our life together, how once it took off, we'd be set, finally free to build the life we dreamed of. Marriage felt imminent, a certainty. He made me feel seen, valued, loved in a way I hadn't felt since before the accident. I signed the papers, my heart full of hope, a hope that shattered when I found the emails, the hushed phone calls, the undeniable evidence of his affair and his plan to leave me with the crippling debt. It wasn't just the money, it was the cruel manipulation of my deepest vulnerability, my desperate need for acceptance. The car accident was a blur of pain and fear, a moment where I truly believed my life was over. But instead of an ending, it was a beginning. The physical healing was a miracle. The scars gone, replaced by smooth, flawless skin. The inheritance, a twist of fate I never saw coming. My great-uncle, a man I'd never met, had apparently followed my life from afar, impressed by my resilience, my quiet determination. He saw the potential that others had overlooked. He didn't just leave me money, he left me power, a controlling interest in a major bank. Suddenly, I had the means, the platform, and the anonymity of a new face to finally confront the ghosts of my past. I wasn't the scarred, desperate girl anymore. I was Miss Reynolds, a woman with a new face and a long memory. And I was ready to collect. David came into the bank like he owned the place, all bluster and forced charm. He was looking for loan extensions, his business, the one he'd built on my co-signed debt, floundering. He didn't recognize me, of course. Why would he? I was Miss Reynolds now, the cold, efficient banker he'd been scheduled to meet. I sat across from him, my face a mask of professional sympathy, listening to his well-rehearsed story of unforeseen circumstances and temporary setbacks. He talked about his dreams, his vision, the same dreams he'd sold me just months ago. It made my stomach turn, but I kept my expression neutral. I was playing the passive role, the understanding bank representative. "I understand your situation, Mr. Miller," I said, my voice calm and even. "We'll look into what we can do." He seemed relieved, falling for the act completely. He had no idea the wheels were already in motion. My secret countermove was already well underway. The moment I learned he was coming to my bank, I set my team to work. Not just looking at his loan here, but digging into all his outstanding debts. I used my resources, my connections, to quietly purchase every single one of his loans from other institutions. Every cent he owed, he now owed to me. While that was happening, I had my private investigators digging into his business practices. It didn't take long to confirm my suspicions. David wasn't just bad at business, he was a con artist, moving debt around, finding new unsuspecting people to prop up his failing ventures. And the worst part? He was doing it again. He had a new girlfriend, a bright-eyed woman who clearly saw him as her ticket to a better life. He was selling her the same dream, the same promises, setting her up to be his next financial casualty. I decided to accelerate the timeline. I invited David and his new girlfriend, a woman named Sarah, to a special client dinner. It was held at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, a place David would normally only dream of. Sarah was clearly impressed, clinging to his arm, her eyes wide with admiration. David was preening, puffing up his chest, completely oblivious to the trap he was walking into. Throughout the dinner, I maintained my persona as Ms. Reynolds, the gracious, successful banker. I steered the conversation subtly, asking Sarah about her background, her aspirations. Then, I started dropping hints, small, seemingly innocent questions about business partnerships and financial transparency. It's so important, I'd say, my gaze fixed on Sarah, to truly understand the financial health of any venture you're involved in. Sometimes things aren't what they seem on the surface. I talked about the importance of due diligence, about red flags in business. I could see the subtle shift in Sarah's expression, the flicker of doubt in her eyes. I wasn't revealing anything concrete, just planting seeds of unease. David, meanwhile, was more interested in me, and he kept complimenting my dress, my everything. He didn't see his ex-fiancée, the girl with the scars he'd abandoned. He saw a beautiful, successful woman who controlled his financial future. His attempts at charm became increasingly inappropriate. He leaned in close, his voice a low murmur, suggesting we discuss his situation more privately, perhaps back at his place after dinner. It was disgusting, a crude reminder of his true nature. I smiled coolly, politely deflecting his advances. "All business matters will be handled through official channels, Mr. Miller," I said, my voice firm, the professional mask back in place. He still didn't get it. The public fallout came a week later at a financial review meeting at the bank. David was there, along with his lawyer and, surprisingly, Sarah. She sat a little apart from him, her expression guarded. David started his usual song and dance about needing more time, more flexibility. That's when I cut him off. "Mr. Miller," I said, my voice ringing through the boardroom, "your situation is unique." I paused, letting the tension build. "As of this morning, through various acquisitions, I now hold all of your outstanding debts." The color drained from his face. His lawyer sputtered. Sarah's eyes widened, looking from me to David, a dawning horror on her face. "Furthermore," I continued, my gaze fixed on David, "my team has uncovered compelling evidence of fraudulent business practices, including the misrepresentation of assets and the intentional offloading of debt onto unsuspecting parties." I didn't need to name the party. Sarah gasped, pushing her chair back. She stood up, her eyes blazing at David. "You are doing it again!" she cried, her voice trembling with rage. She turned and walked out, leaving David stunned and alone. He finally looked at me, really looked at me, his eyes scanning my face, my hair, my clothes. A flicker of recognition, then disbelief, then horror crossed his features. "You," he whispered, the word barely audible. "It's you." The mask of professional sympathy dropped. I let him see the cold, hard truth in my eyes. "Yes, David. It's me." He started to beg, rambling about how he was desperate, how he never meant to hurt me, how the money was the only thing that mattered to his family. He still didn't acknowledge the betrayal, the emotional damage. "Please," he choked out, "mercy." I leaned forward, my hands clasped on the desk. "Mercy?" I repeated, my voice dangerously soft. "You want mercy? After what you did?" I stood up, walking to the window, looking out at the city skyline. "I'm not going to ruin you overnight, David. That would be too kind." I turned back to him, a small, predatory smile playing on my lips. "I'm going to offer you a fair deal, a repayment plan structured over the next 6 months. You'll liquidate your assets, sell off everything you can. It will be tight, very tight." He looked confused, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. He still didn't understand. This wasn't just about repayment. The terms were designed to strip him bare, to leave him with nothing. He'd be chasing payments, scrambling to survive, for the next 6 months, at the end of which he would be financially annihilated. He agreed, relief flooding his face. He thought he'd dodged a bullet. He had no idea I'd just handed him the gun. The final twist in his loop came later that day. An anonymous package containing all the evidence of his fraud was delivered to the appropriate authorities. Let the legal system finish what I started. David Miller was just the first. Mia and Lena's high-end boutique was exactly as I imagined. All glass and polished chrome, overpriced dresses, and an air of exclusivity I knew was built on a lie. I walked in, a potential investor, dressed in a way that screamed old money and serious intentions. Mia was the first to greet me, her smile wide and practiced. She didn't recognize me, of course. Why would she? The girl she knew, the one with the scarred face and the desperate need to belong, was long gone. "Welcome to our little piece of heaven," Mia chirped, her eyes raking over my outfit, assessing my potential. "I'm Mia, one of the owners." I introduced myself as Miss Reynolds, expressing interest in potentially investing in their expansion. Mia immediately started fawning, her conversation a whirlwind of superficial compliments and veiled boasts about their success. Lena appeared from the back, looking every bit the sophisticated businesswoman, a stark contrast to the resentful sister who stole my inheritance. "Miss Reynolds, so lovely to meet you," she said, her voice smooth and confident. She gave me a tour of the boutique, pointing out their exclusive designs, boasting about their rapid growth. "It's all thanks to our startup capital," Lena said, a casual wave of her hand encompassing the entire store. "Family money, you know. Our grandmother was very wise with her investments. She knew exactly who to entrust her legacy to." The implication was clear. She believed the inheritance was rightfully hers, that I, the damaged one, was never meant to have it. It took everything in me to keep my smile in place, to maintain the persona of the impressed potential investor. While they were busy planning how to spend my potential investment money, my silent countermoves were in full swing. Through various shell companies and anonymous transactions, I began acquiring the properties surrounding their boutique. One by one, I bought up the neighboring businesses, creating a buffer zone I controlled. Then, the most crucial piece, I purchased the building where their boutique was located. They were renters, completely unaware that their new landlord was the person they had so cruelly betrayed. I also started looking into their suppliers, their designers. It didn't take long to find the artisans whose original designs Mia had borrowed, slightly altered, and passed off as her own. They were small, independent artists easily exploited. I connected them with top-tier patent attorneys, all pro bono, of course. The lawsuits were coming. And then there was Lena's lie. I hired forensic accountants and legal experts to dig into our grandmother's will. The evidence was damning. Lena hadn't just claimed the inheritance was hers. She had forged key documents, altering Grandma's true intentions. I scheduled a follow-up business meeting with Mia and Lena to discuss the details of my investment. We met in a private room at a high-end hotel. I watched them, their faces alight with greed and anticipation. As we talked about their expansion plans, their marketing strategies, I started weaving in subtle references, small details only the three of us would know, shared memories from our childhoods. "It reminds me a little of when we used to pretend to run our own store in the treehouse," I said, my voice light, a hint of a smile playing on my lips. Mia's eyes flickered. Lena's smile faltered for a second. I mentioned specific inside jokes, nicknames only family would use. Mia shifted uncomfortably, her gaze darting between me and Lena. The polished facade was starting to crack. They didn't know who I was, but they felt the unnerving sensation of being seen, truly seen by a stranger. The public fallout was set for their boutique's anniversary gala, a lavish affair designed to showcase their success. I arrived as the guest of honor, introduced as the mysterious Miss Reynolds, the potential investor who had taken the city's financial world by storm. Mia and Lena beamed, basking in the attention, completely unaware that their carefully constructed world was about to implode. I took the stage, a microphone in my hand, the spotlight on me. "Thank you, Mia and Lena, for inviting me to celebrate your success," I began, my voice clear and strong. I spoke about ambition, about building dreams. Then, I dropped the first bomb. As some of you may know, I've recently acquired several properties in this neighborhood, including, as of last week, this very building. A ripple went through the crowd. Mia and Lena exchanged panicked glances. Effective immediately, I announced, my voice unwavering. The rent for this establishment will be increasing by a significant margin. Gasps from the audience. Mia paled, her eyes wide with fear, but I wasn't finished. Building a successful brand requires originality, creativity, and respecting the work of others. I gestured to the back of the room. Tonight, I'd like to introduce you to some truly original talents. The small group of artisans whose designs Mia had stolen walked forward, their faces a mixture of nervousness and determination. These are the true artists, I said, introducing each one by name. And they are here tonight, represented by their legal counsel, to discuss the unauthorized use of their designs. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Mia looked like she was going to faint. Lena's face was a mask of pure terror. Then came the final, devastating blow. I turned to the small group of family members who had been invited, including some of Lena's closest confidants. Family is important, I said, my gaze sweeping over them, and so is honoring the wishes of those we've lost. I held up a folder. Recent investigations into the estate of our beloved grandmother have revealed discrepancies regarding the distribution of her inheritance. I opened the folder, revealing copies of the forged documents. Evidence suggests that our grandmother's true intentions were misrepresented. This inheritance, the foundation of this very business, I gestured around the boutique, was not solely intended for one person. The room erupted in whispers. Lena stumbled back, her face contorted in a silent scream. Mia and Lena rushed towards me, grabbing my arms, their carefully constructed composure shattered. "Please don't do this," Mia whispered, her eyes pleading. "Think of the scandal." Lena was crying, her voice hoarse. "Blood is thicker than water. We can fix this." I looked at them, the two people who had systematically dismantled my self-worth, who had stolen my future. Their desperation was almost comical. "You have a choice," I said, my voice low so only they could hear. "Public legal consequences, the unraveling of your lies for everyone to see, or a private arrangement." They looked at me, hope flickering in their eyes. "What kind of arrangement?" Lena asked, her voice trembling. "One where you sign over this business," I said simply. "Every asset, every piece of inventory. You walk away with nothing but the clothes on your backs." Their faces fell. They knew in that moment that I held all the cards. After a tense, whispered negotiation filled with their desperate pleas and my unwavering resolve, they chose the private arrangement. They thought they were avoiding public humiliation. They didn't realize they were simply handing me the final piece of the puzzle. Their boutique, built on stolen inheritance and stolen designs, was now mine. Carter was on top of the world. His face was plastered on financial news sites, lauded as a visionary, a genius who had revolutionized risk assessment. He was presenting at a major financial conference, the kind of event I used to only dream of attending. And he was presenting my work. My financial models, the algorithms I had poured my life into, were now his ticket to the top. He stood on stage, confident and arrogant, explaining the intricacies of his innovative approach, accepting the applause and accolades that should have been mine. I sat in the audience, an observer in my new skin, my new identity. Miss Reynolds, a rising figure in the banking world, here to network and observe. I watched him, a cold knot forming in my stomach. The injustice of it, the audacity. He had stolen my work and destroyed my career, and now he was being celebrated for it. During a break, I approached him, extending my hand. "Mr. Hayes," I said, my voice calm and professional. "Miss Reynolds, I was incredibly impressed with your presentation. Your models are truly groundbreaking." His eyes lit up, preening under the praise. He didn't recognize me, not even a flicker. "Thank you, Miss Reynolds," he said, his handshake firm and practiced. "I've been working on these concepts for years, a lot of late nights." A lot of my late nights, I thought bitterly. I expressed interest in potentially investing in his company, praising his innovative approach. He was clearly flattered, eager to talk business. My secret countermove was already in motion. Using my connections in the banking world, I had secured a consulting position at his firm, a seemingly temporary role to evaluate potential investment opportunities. This gave me access to their servers, to their internal documents. It didn't take long to find the evidence, the digital footprint of my original work, the dates and timestamps that proved the models were mine. While I was gathering the evidence, I was also building relationships with the board members, the key players at his firm. I demonstrated my own financial acumen, my ability to analyze complex data, my strategic thinking. I positioned myself not just as a potential investor, but as a financial genius in my own right, someone who understood the nuances of risk in a way that few others did. I subtly pointed out flaws in how Carter was implementing his models, small inefficiencies that were costing the firm money. The algorithm is sound, I'd say casually in meetings, but the application seems misaligned with the original intent. It's almost as if the person implementing it doesn't fully grasp its core principles. I watched Carter squirm, his confidence wavering under my quiet scrutiny. The public fallout was set for his promotion ceremony, a lavish event celebrating his elevation to a senior partner. The room was filled with the firm's executives, board members, and key clients. Carter stood on the stage, a self-satisfied smirk on his face, ready to accept the accolades. Just before the ceremony began, I pulled Carter aside into a quiet anteroom. His smile was still in place, expecting more praise, perhaps a hint of the investment I'd discussed. "Carter," I said, my voice low, stripped of the professional veneer. He looked at me, a flicker of confusion. "Do you recognize me?" I asked. He frowned, studying my face. "Nothing." I smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "It's me, Carter, the girl you fired." His eyes widened in shock, the color draining from his face. "No," he whispered, shaking his head in disbelief. "It can't be. The scars? They're gone," I finished for him. "A little miracle?" I didn't give him time to process. "You stole my work, Carter, my models, my algorithms. You built your career on my back." He stammered, tried to deny it. "I was mentoring you," he insisted, his voice weak. "Helping you develop your skills." I laughed, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. "Mentoring? You took everything I created and claimed it as your own. You dismissed me, humiliated me." I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. "And now, I'm going to take it all back." I left him standing there, a frozen statue of disbelief and fear, and walked back into the main hall. I waited until the speeches were over, until Carter was moments away from receiving his promotion. Then, I took the stage. I hadn't been scheduled to speak. Everyone looked surprised. I cleared my throat, the microphone amplifying the sound. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice calm and authoritative. "I'd like to talk to you briefly about intellectual property." I spoke about the importance of originality, of giving credit where it's due. Then, I pulled out a tablet displaying side-by-side comparisons of my original work and the models Carter had been presenting. The dates, the code, the undeniable evidence. "These are my financial models," I stated, my voice ringing with quiet conviction. "Developed and created by me, long before Mr. Hayes claimed them as his own." The room was silent, stunned. Carter, on the stage, looked like he was about to collapse. I presented the evidence, the timestamps, the internal documents I had retrieved. The board members exchanged grim glances. The truth was undeniable. By the time I finished, the atmosphere was electric with shock and disbelief. A hurried, whispered consultation among the board members followed. Then, the chairman stepped forward. "Miss Reynolds," he said, his voice strained. "In light of this compelling evidence, the board has made a decision." He paused, looking at Carter, who was now being quietly escorted off the stage by security. "We would like to offer you a position at our firm, a senior partner position, Mr. Hayes's position." I met his gaze, a sense of quiet triumph settling over me. "I accept," I said simply. Carter was pleading from the doorway, his voice hoarse. It was a misunderstanding. I can explain. I didn't look at him. My focus was on the future, on the career that was rightfully mine. I had taken back what was stolen, and in doing so, I had ensured that Carter Hayes's financial career was over. My revenge felt complete, a carefully orchestrated symphony of their own making. The banking gala was a dazzling display of wealth and power. I stood on the podium, accepting the award, the applause washing over me. The articles had been circulating for weeks, detailing the rise of the mysterious Miss Reynolds, the heiress who had quietly revolutionized the industry. My new face, my new name, were now recognized, celebrated. The details of my story had started to leak. The unexpected inheritance, the dramatic acquisition of a controlling interest in a major bank, my ruthless efficiency in turning around struggling assets. David, Mia, Lena, and Carter, they all saw the articles. They saw my face, the face they had never known, and connected the dots. The timing of my rise, the specific details of the businesses I acquired, the subtle hints in my public appearances, it all clicked into place. They realized the girl they had betrayed, the one they thought was broken and irrelevant, was now the woman who held their fates in her hands. They learned the extent of my power. It wasn't just the bank, it was a vast financial empire, built on my uncle's hidden wealth and my own strategic maneuvers. They learned that my uncle wasn't just a silent partner. He was a banking magnate who had recognized my innate understanding of finance, nurturing it from afar. And they learned the truth about my rebirth. The accident wasn't just any accident. It was a multi-car pileup on a remote highway, a scenario that should have left no survivors. My uncle, through his vast resources, had ensured I received experimental medical treatment, procedures that not only healed my physical wounds, but, almost unbelievably, erased the burn scars that had tormented me for so long. My survival, my transformation wasn't just luck. It was a deliberate, costly intervention. The messages started coming in, tentative at first, then increasingly desperate. David claiming he always loved me, that the money never mattered, only my well-being. Mia insisting her cruelty was just childhood immaturity, offering a tearful apology and the hope of rekindled friendship. Lena invoking the sacred bonds of family, arguing that blood was thicker than water, that we should support each other. Carter proposing a business partnership, claiming he always recognized my talent, that he only wanted to push me to reach my full potential. Each one, a carefully constructed plea, designed to appeal to the person they thought I was, the girl who craved acceptance. I invited them all to my penthouse office, not separately but simultaneously. They arrived one by one, ushered into the spacious, minimalist room. The tension was immediate, palpable. They didn't know the others would be there. David flinched when he saw Mia and Lena. Mia paled at the sight of Carter. Lena's eyes darted between them all, a look of dawning horror on her face. Carter stood awkwardly, unsure of where to look. I sat behind my desk, the city spread out like a glittering carpet behind me. I didn't stand up. I didn't offer them drinks, I just watched them. These 4 people who had shaped my past with their cruelty. "Take a seat," I said, my voice calm, almost conversational. They sat on the edge of the plush sofas, a nervous energy radiating from them. I looked at David first. "David," I began, my voice soft but firm. "You used my desperation, my hope for a future, to offload your debts. You promised me a life, and you left me for dead, financially and emotionally." He started to speak, to offer his practiced excuses, but I held up a hand. "Mia," I continued, turning to her, "you weaponized my vulnerability, my scars, to make yourself feel better, to ensure I remained isolated." Mia's lower lip trembled. "Lena," I said, my gaze shifting to my sister, "you stole my future, the inheritance meant to give me a chance, and claimed it as your own, twisting Grandma's memory." Lena buried her face in her hands. "And Carter," I finished, looking at him directly, "you stole my work, my intellectual property, and destroyed my career when I confronted you." I spoke of the girl they had hurt, the one who was so desperate for acceptance, so broken by their betrayals. I didn't hide my past weakness. the painful truth of how much I had craved their validation. I let you do it, I admitted, my voice raw with the memory. I was so blinded by my own need, I couldn't see what you were doing. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle in the silent room. Now, I said, my voice hardening, I hold all the cards. I could, with a single phone call, ensure that each of your lives is systematically dismantled. Financially, socially, professionally. Their eyes widened, fear replacing the last vestiges of their carefully constructed apologies. They started talking over each other, a chorus of desperate justifications, half-hearted apologies, and promises of change. David swore he'd repay every cent. Mia sobbed about how much she regretted her actions. Lena pleaded with me to remember we were family. Carter insisted he could be an asset, a valuable partner. I listened, my expression unreadable. When they finally fell silent, exhausted by their own pleas, I spoke. My voice was quiet, but it filled the room, silencing the lingering echoes of their desperation. No, I said. Just one word, simple, definitive. They stared at me, confusion replacing the fear. No? David whispered. No to what? I met their gaze one by one. No to your apologies. No to your justifications. No to your offers of reconciliation or partnership. I stood up then, walking towards the window, my back to them. I don't want revenge anymore, I said, looking out at the city lights. Not the kind you think I want, at least. I turned back, my expression calm, resolute. I don't want to actively destroy you. I don't want to waste any more of my energy, my life, on you. I paused, letting the finality of my words sink in. What I want is for you to become irrelevant to my story. I wasn't seeking their ruin, not anymore. Their power over me was gone. They no longer had the ability to hurt me, to define me. They were just people from a past life, a chapter I was closing. You are dismissed, I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. Permanently. I watched them go, their shoulders slumped, their faces etched with the realization that their power was gone, and their pleas had fallen on deaf ears. There would be no reconciliation, no forgiveness, and no further direct acts of revenge. They were simply out of my life. A year later, the sand is warm beneath my bare feet. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I walk along my private beach, the sound of the waves a peaceful constant. So much has changed in a year. The thirst for revenge, once a burning fire in my gut, has faded. It didn't bring the lasting satisfaction I thought it would. The real healing came from moving forward, from building something new. I've established a foundation, funded by my own wealth, dedicated to providing reconstructive surgery and support for burn victims, especially children. It's a way to honor the past without being trapped by it. I've also found genuine connections, friendships built on mutual respect and shared interests, not on my desperate need for acceptance. My phone buzzes. It's my assistant calling about a promising new financial model I've been developing. We talk numbers, projections, the thrill of building something innovative. It's a good feeling, a sense of purpose that has nothing to do with the past. I hang up, my mind still buzzing with possibilities. As I walk further down the beach, I see her. A young woman, sitting alone on the sand, her face partially hidden by her hands. I can see the faint lines of scars on the side of her face. My heart aches, a familiar, dull ache. I approach her slowly, my steps quiet on the sand. I don't offer pity, just a quiet presence. I sit beside her, a comfortable distance between us. We talk, small talk at first, about the sunset, the beauty of the ocean. She tells me about her struggles, the difficulties she faces because of her scars, the financial burdens that feel insurmountable. It's like looking into a mirror of my past self. I could offer her money, solve her immediate problems with a simple transfer. But I know now that money isn't always the answer. It can provide comfort, opportunities, but it can't heal the deeper wounds. Instead, I tell her about my foundation, about the resources available. I offer her mentorship, a chance to learn, to build her own future, to find her own strength. I see a flicker of hope in her eyes, a spark of possibility. As I look out at the horizon, the last rays of sun touching the water, I realize my rebirth wasn't about the flawless face, or the vast wealth, or the perfectly executed revenge. It was about finding value in myself, independent of how others saw me or how they treated me. I am no longer defined by the scars I carried for so long or by the revenge I sought. I am simply free.